Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Happy Liberation Day to all Americans who are celebrating. Or is it the Liberation Implementation Day? We are not clear about the nomenclature, but either way, Donald Trump's tariffs have officially kicked in, including a whopping 104% on China. The markets are blinking red across the world, but Trump is defiant. He says leaders are lining up to strike a deal with him. We'll tell you what his negotiation plans are and how the tariffs will be imposed. Also, how will India deal with it? We put this question to India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal today. Stay tuned for that conversation. Meanwhile, China is promising to fight the tariffs to the end. Funny enough, they are the only stock market in the green today. So we will decode their trade war plans. Also, why Elon Musk is sparring with Trump's trade officials. Are Chinese soldiers fighting in Ukraine? Is NATO entering the Indo-Pacific? Will Indonesia take in Gazans to appease Trump? And has the US taken back the Bagram base from the Taliban? All this and more lined up. The headlines first.
Russia invites Prime Minister Narendra Modi to its Victory Day parade. The May 9th celebrations will mark the 80th anniversary of its victory over Germany in World War II. Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit India later this year. Indian authorities prepare for the extradition from the United States of 2611 accused Tahawar Rana. The Canadian citizen born in Pakistan is accused of helping plan the 2008 Mumbai terror attack that killed 166 people. This month, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Rana's bid to remain in the country. India withdraws a key transshipment facility granted to Bangladesh. The facility allowed export cargo from Bangladesh to third countries using Indian land customs stations en route to ports and airports. It was provided by India to Bangladesh in June 2020. More than 15,000 people take to the streets in Greece calling for higher wages to match the rising cost of living. Air traffic controllers joined the action, while rail and public transport as well as island ferry services were hit. This is the second 24-hour general strike this year. And Algeria criticizes the U.S. after Washington reaffirms its support for Morocco's stance on the disputed Western Sahara. It is a territory largely controlled by Rabat but claimed for decades by the Algiers-backed Polisario Front. Algiers cut diplomatic relations with Rabat in 2021.
These countries are calling us up, kissing my
It is day one of Donald Trump's trade war. And how's it going? Exactly as we thought. Markets are down everywhere, customers are bracing for chaos, and businesses are confused. Basically, all the warnings were right. Trump's reciprocal tariffs kicked in after midnight, that's 9:30 a.m. India time. If you loaded cargo after that, you will face the new tariffs. In India's case, that is 26%, that is the tariff on India. If you loaded before that, the old tariffs will apply. So what matters is when you loaded the cargo, not when it reaches America. I know it's a bit complicated, but President Donald Trump is not bothered by any of this. He attended a Republican dinner yesterday, and he pushed back against the criticism. A lot of economists and business leaders have questioned his tariffs, but Trump says he knows what the hell he's doing.
These countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. I know what the hell I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. And you know what I'm doing, too. That's why you vote for me.
That's Donald Trump for you, defiant as always. He is planning to expand his tariff regime. Yesterday, he promised to impose tariffs on pharmaceuticals as well. Remember, drugs had been exempt from his Liberation Day tariffs, but now he's added them to the list. And how are the markets responding? Again, as you would expect, markets across the world plunged on opening. They staged a minor recovery yesterday. Investors were hopeful of a last-minute pause or delay. But once the tariffs kicked in, the sell-off began. Take a look. Oil prices are also falling. Brent crude dropped to $60 today. That's the lowest since early 2021. And do not celebrate the falling oil prices yet because it's actually a warning sign. The markets are bracing for an economic slowdown, possibly even a recession. And that is why oil prices are falling, because economic activity is expected to fall. I know all of this sounds scary, but remember, this is a man-made crisis. So there are exit ramps all over the place. The question is, does Donald Trump even want an exit? We are getting mixed messages from the White House. His trade officials say, do not expect relief. Exemptions will not be given in the near term.
Senator, the president has been clear with me and with others that he does not intend to have exclusions and exemptions, especially given the nature of the action. If you have Swiss cheese in the action, it can undermine the overall point, which is to get rid of the deficit, achieve reciprocity.
So no exemptions. What's the other exit ramp? Possibly trade deals. Trump is open to the idea of negotiations. He says he wants highly tailored deals. Listen to this.
And we're doing very well in making, I call them tailored deals, not off the rack. These are tailored, highly tailored deals. Right now, Japan is flying here to make a deal. South Korea is flying here to make a deal, and others are flying here.
This is clearly a shift. A lot of people did call the tariffs a negotiating tactic, but the White House has rejected those claims. Now Trump himself is open to talks. The question is, what are these tailored deals? The White House later offered an explanation. The deals will be customized for each country. They will factor in certain variables. Say, the US offers foreign aid to a particular country, or the US has soldiers in certain countries. Even that will be factored in.
The president's message has been simple and consistent from the beginning. To countries around the world, bring us your best offers, and he will listen. I think the president, again, is going to have a custom, tailor-made approach to each and every country. And if that means discussions of foreign aid, of our military presence in these countries, how those troops are paid for, come to the table, that could be part of the negotiation in these economic negotiations.
There is good news and bad news here. The good news is the rhetoric is softening. Trump is clearly keen on making deals. He doesn't want to keep these tariffs forever. The bad news is their demands are too steep. Some 70 countries have reached out to the United States. Imagine negotiating customized deals with all of them. 70 countries. It could take months, if not years. And that's enough time for the tariffs to hurt the global economy. And do not forget, not every country is offering concessions. China wants to fight till the end. The Europeans are imposing tariffs later this month, and Canada is also hitting back. So there is no guarantee that the trade war will end. The next few weeks will be crucial here. The high tariff goods will begin reaching America by the end of this month, and that's when customers will feel the pinch, when they start buying this stuff. Let's see if other countries can hold on till then.
Right now, China is paying a 104% tariff. Until they make a deal with us, they want to make a deal, they just don't know how to get it started. Because they're proud people.
So Trump's punishing tariffs are a reality, and no one is feeling the heat more than China. The US president has made good on his threat. Chinese goods now face 104% import duty in the United States. Trump has raised the tariffs on China by another 50%. Why? Because China decided to hit back. Beijing imposed retaliatory tariffs on American products, so President Trump responded by raising the pressure. But despite this escalation, he believes that China still wants a deal. Listen to what the White House said last night.
Look, I just spoke to the president about this, and he believes that China wants to make a deal with the United States. He believes China has to make a deal with the United States. It was a mistake for China to retaliate. The president, when America is punched, he punches back harder. That's why there will be 104% tariffs going into effect on China tonight at midnight.
Does China want to make a deal? It does not look like it at the moment. Earlier today, China retaliated once again. In the last round, it had imposed 34% tariffs on US imports. Now it has raised it to 84%. China has slapped an 84% tariff on American imports. And with this, China issued a fresh statement. It repeated what it said yesterday, that they are ready to fight till the end. The US will, and I'm quoting, the US will reap what it sows. That is the message from Beijing.
The US side is still imposing extreme pressure on China by imposing tariffs indiscriminately. China firmly opposes and will never accept such arrogant and bullying behavior. If the US really wants to solve the problem through dialogue and negotiations, it should show an attitude of equality, respect, and reciprocity. If the US disregards the interests of both countries and the international community and insists on waging a tariff war and trade war, China will definitely retaliate.
That doesn't sound like someone who wants a deal. Beijing is considering more ways to hit back, like banning US companies from buying Chinese products and limiting exports of rare earths. These are minerals which are needed to make modern electronics. Even selling US treasuries is on the table. So those are some of the steps that China can take in the short term. This may cause some pain for the US, but what is China's long-term plan? How will it counter the Trump tariffs and stabilize its exports? First, let's look at the problem that China is trying to solve. How big is it? The US is China's largest trade partner. Every year, America buys Chinese goods worth billions of dollars. Last year, they bought $440 billion worth of products. Trump's tariffs will hit a large number of these products. They face 104% tax now, which makes Chinese goods far more expensive for the US market. So China needs alternatives. It is trying to make new friends, build stronger economic ties with other nations. In fact, China began laying the groundwork before the tariffs kicked in. It met with officials from Japan and South Korea. This was about a week ago, and the outcome was a pledge. China, Japan, and South Korea agreed to deepen their economic ties. Similarly, Beijing made an outreach to Europe as well. Recently, a Chinese vice minister for finance visited Brussels. He offered an alliance to the EU, an alliance to protect multilateral trade. Beijing is knocking on New Delhi's door too. A week ago, the Chinese president sent a letter. It was the 75th anniversary of India-China diplomatic ties. So Xi Jinping wrote to India's President Draupadi Murmu. He called for deeper diplomatic ties and a dragon-elephant tango, as he put it. Yesterday, before Trump's tariffs kicked in, China made a more direct appeal. The Chinese embassy in New Delhi issued a new statement. It said India and China should stand together and combat the Trump tariffs. I have the quote with me. Listen to this. Facing the US abuse of tariffs, the two largest developing countries should stand together to overcome the difficulties. Remains to be seen if India will reciprocate, but this is the obvious thing to do. China needs new markets for its exports, so Chinese officials are reaching out. They're looking to strike fresh trade deals, maybe even undercut some of Trump's own efforts. Of course, all of this is easier said than done. You cannot replace $440 billion in exports overnight. So at least in the short term, Chinese exporters will feel the pressure. A deal with America could ease some of this pain, but Beijing does not want to appear weak. It wants to fight. Trump fired the first shot in this trade fight. China has vowed to fight back and retaliate every step of the way. So by all accounts, this trade war is set to escalate. There are challenges ahead. Trump's tariffs have shaken markets across the world, as you saw. How will they impact India? Indian goods face a 26% tariff in the US. That's not as severe as China, which now faces a 104% tariff, or Vietnam, which is at 46%, or even Cambodia at 49%. Relatively, India is better off. But it's not insulated from the shock either.
Taking all these factors into consideration, real GDP is now projected for this fiscal 25-26 at 6.5%, with Q1 at 6.5%, Q2 at 6.7%, Q3 at 6.6%, and Q4 at 6.3%. While the risks are evenly balanced around these baseline projections, uncertainties remain high in the wake of recent spike in global volatility.
And that became clear today when the Reserve Bank of India slashed the country's growth forecast. This is India's central bank. It now says that India is expected to grow at 6.5% this year. Earlier, the projection was 6.7%. So it's a drop of 0.2%. The Reserve Bank of India, or the RBI, is responding to the Trump tariffs. It is cutting interest rates in a big way. Today, they announced a 0.25% cut. This is the second rate cut of 2025. More cuts are likely during the year. And why is this important? Because interest rates are a valuable tool for any central bank. Think of them as a money tap. When the rates go down, when interest rates go down, the tap opens. So more money flows into the economy because loans become cheaper. When the interest rates go up, the tap tightens. It slows the flow of cash. The first rate cut was announced in February. It was the first one in nearly 5 years, the first rate cut by India's central bank. Back then, inflation was running high, so the RBI had raised interest rates to cool the economy. This is during the pandemic. Naturally, when rates are being cut now, it will open the money tap once again. The RBI is basically trying to stimulate the economy. It wants to avoid any possibility of slowdown that the Trump tariffs might induce. They're pushing more cash into the economy. They want people to spend. So that's the RBI's response to the tariffs. What about the government of India? How will India respond to these tariffs? For the moment, the plan is to respond with restraint. Today, India's External Affairs Minister spoke about this. S. Jaishankar said that India's priority is to strike a trade deal.
We decided that we will engage the Trump administration early on this set of issues. And we were very open with them, very constructive with them, as they were with us. And what we agreed to do was to try to negotiate a bilateral trade agreement by fall of this year. So from the Indian perspective, actually doing, working out something bilaterally with the United States is not at all a sort of a negative or a sort of unwanted situation. On the contrary, it is something which has long been our objective.
So the goal is to finalize a trade deal by fall. In principle, that should make the tariffs go away. Because India holds some unique advantages in this situation. It began talks with the Trump administration early on, and Trump himself wants this deal done. There is an in-principle agreement between the US and India, but with Donald Trump, you never really know. He has a habit of shifting goalposts. So what is India's strategy to negotiate with an erratic US president? Just a few hours back, we spoke with Piyush Goyal, India's Commerce Minister. He is leading the negotiations from the Indian side. Piyush Goyal has been engaging with his counterparts in the United States, and here is how he sees the current situation. Trump tariffs have kicked in. Markets are volatile. Recession fears loom. What is India's strategy, sir?
Thank you, Palki. I think we've all seen the way Prime Minister Modi has deftly managed the entire situation. He was first off the block in building back his old friendship and relationship with President Trump. They both jointly declared that the US and India are trusted partners, and we will work towards a bilateral trade agreement by fall of 2025. I think our strategy is very clear. We are engaged with the US.
You've been at the forefront of the conversations, and you've engaged with the Americans and your counterparts in Washington, D.C. What have they told you? What is their primary concern? Is it the trade surplus, or is it the high tariffs? What do they want to fix?
The whole issue is about fair trade. we saw the trade deficit with China grow by leaps and bounds. And India and Indian manufacturers, Indian industry, Indian trade suffered massively. Similarly, the US has suffered massive trade deficits because of the non-market economy that is China, because of their predatory pricing or unfair trade practices. And I think the United States is trying to reset the rules of the game. And in some sense, it's a good omen for India because it opens up huge opportunities.
I'm sure you had some calculation before the tariffs were announced. Was 26% closer to your best case scenario or worst case scenario?
I think the tariffs have been determined based on a formula, which is the trade deficit that the US has with a particular country divided by the total imports into the US from that country.
What do you make of that formula, though? You're a chartered accountant yourself.
I would not like to comment on a formula that's used by the United States. Basis that formula, they've come up with different tariffs for different countries. We believe that India was not one of those countries which really needed to have tariffs on them because we were already in engagement for a bilateral trade deal. But I think the US has not differentiated. For every country, they've come out with a number. But we are in constant engagement, and I think we'll be working with them to take off these additional tariffs in the days to come.
And India has a better deal than some of our other players in the region.
And we are much faster off the block compared to the others.
If for some reason it does not happen by the end of this year, what is the plan B, or is plan B to make plan A work?
There's always plan A, plan B, plan C, but we succeed in whatever we take up.
President Trump has said that India is going to substantially reduce tariffs, and I know that we've made some moves with American whiskey and high-end bikes and so on. But have you also spelled out some red lines that these are the no-go zones where we shall not entertain American demands?
Palki, we always look at India's interests. For us, it is India first, but every trade deal is a win-win for both sides. And it involves negotiations. We never negotiate on the platform of a news channel. Negotiations are behind closed doors. And there's a lot of give and take that happens. But the final outcome will always be in India's interest. That assurance I can give to all Indian countrymen.
So negotiation, not confrontation. That is how India is approaching the situation. Reports say India may offer duty-free imports to the United States. This could cover a wide range of sectors. This might help speed up the deal as well. But such an offer would come with strict conditions. At the same time, New Delhi is keeping its options open. Along with America, India is negotiating with 7 other countries. This includes the United Kingdom and New Zealand and blocs like the European Union. We want trade deals with all of them. New Delhi is exploring free trade pacts with multiple players. West Asia is in the mix as well. Countries like Bahrain and Qatar have shown interest. They want trade deals with India. So New Delhi is taking a pragmatic approach. Yes, Trump's trade war is a challenge, but India has a rare chance as well, a chance to build new trade alliances, to help reshape global supply chains. India could make and should make the most of it. Money can buy a lot of things. It can buy you fast cars, faster rockets, a brain chip company, even an entire social media platform. But money cannot buy you everything. It cannot buy you the Oval Office. That's a lesson that Elon Musk is learning the hard way. He backed Donald Trump in the elections. He became Trump's biggest donor. He used X to cheerlead for the US president when he was the candidate. But none of that is translating into real influence where it really matters, especially in the latest tariff drama. Trump's new tariffs kicked in today. It's a trade war that hits everyone. And Elon Musk is not exactly thrilled because at the end of the day, he's a businessman. He still has to run Tesla, and hopefully profitably. So Elon Musk is taking jabs at it, not directly at Trump, of course, but at one of his aides, a man called Peter Navarro. Now, Navarro is Trump's trade advisor. He is the architect of this tariff plan, and Elon Musk is calling him, and I quote, a moron. The drama began last week. Elon Musk was speaking at an Italian party's conference, and he pushed for zero tariffs, no tariffs between Europe and the US.
I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. That would be that's what I hope occurs.
So Peter Navarro was asked about this, about Musk and the administration's position being at odds, and this is what he had to say.
When it comes to tariffs and trade, we all understand in the White House, and the American people understand, that Elon is a car manufacturer, but he's not a car manufacturer. He's a car assembler. He's a car person. That's what he does, and he wants the cheap foreign parts.
Navarro essentially calls Musk a car assembler. He says Tesla gets foreign parts, the company assembles those parts, and that makes it a car assembler. So according to the Trump advisor, Elon Musk just assembles cars. He's not a car manufacturer.
The difference is, in our thinking and Elon's on this, is that we want the tires made in Akron. We want the transmissions made in Indianapolis. We want the engines made in Flint and Saginaw. And we want the cars manufactured here.
Of course, this did not sit too well with Elon Musk, so the post began on X. This was his first post, and I quote, "Navarro is truly a moron. What he says is demonstrably false." He could have stopped at that, but this is Elon Musk we are talking about. So soon, there was another post. And this is what it said. "Tesla has the most American-made cars. Navarro is dumber than a sack of bricks." So Trump's best buddy and his trade advisor are squabbling, and that too on a public platform. So how did the White House respond to this mini mutiny? Well, with the same energy as a kindergarten teacher would to a lunch squabble.
Look, these are obviously two individuals who have very different views on trade and on tariffs. Boys will be boys, and we will let their public sparring continue. And you guys should all be very grateful that we have the most transparent administration in history.
Navarro calls Musk a car assembler, Musk calls Navarro a moron, and the White House says boys will be boys. It is a ridiculous dismissal, but let's zoom out a little. For once, Elon Musk is right. Since 2021, Tesla has dominated the American-made index. It is based on a lot of criteria, like where the parts are made, where it is assembled. Tesla has topped this list repeatedly, which means most of its cars are American-made. But even then, it is not immune to tariffs. And that's because of how the global supply chain works. It is linked in a way that it is impossible to make everything in one country. It's no surprise that he wants no tariffs, Elon Musk. He does not want tariffs. He's made it clear before. Reports suggest that Musk made a direct appeal to President Trump over this. He asked him to reconsider. Didn't work. But what makes this squabble unusual is not Musk's fury. It's where he aimed it, not at Trump, but at Navarro. Now, Musk and Trump have been at odds before, but he knows better than to throw punches directly at the US president. So he's found a more manageable villain in Peter Navarro. It's truly a delicate dance for Elon Musk. He wants free trade, yet he also wants to be in Trump's good books. He wants to still have a seat at the table. So that's the balancing act that Elon Musk now faces. He's learning that real power does not come from donations or tweets alone. It comes from policy and politics. And for now, he's outside the Oval Office, knocking and not commanding. Money can buy you a platform, like we said, but not always a place at the table. Now let's turn to the Ukraine war. President Volodymyr Zelensky has dropped a bombshell. Ukraine claims that it has captured 2 Chinese nationals. They were caught while fighting on behalf of Russia. 2 Chinese nationals fighting for Russia. Kiev says these 2 have been captured, but there are more. And this is not a battlefield update. It is a geopolitical earthquake. Till now, we knew about North Korean troops fighting in Ukraine, but now Chinese nationals seem to be joining in. China's claims of neutrality are in tatters. Are these soldiers of the Chinese army or mercenaries being sent by Beijing? Our next report has more.
On the 8th of April, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed his nation.
Zelensky said at least 2 Chinese nationals were captured by his troops. Ukraine says it has documents and identification cards as proof. Zelensky says there are more Chinese nationals who are fighting on the front lines.
We captured Chinese soldiers on Ukrainian territory. Ukrainians entered the battle in Donetsk region, in Tarassivka and Belohorivka, with 6 Chinese soldiers, 2 were captured. Accordingly, there are documents, there are their passports, there are even credit cards. These are citizens of China. I think this is a very important element.
Here's how the events unfolded. Ukrainian troops launched an assault on Russian positions. This happened in the Donetsk region, which Russia now occupies. The Ukrainian assault began in 2 cities, Tarassivka and Belohorivka. And it was during this skirmish that the Chinese nationals were captured. Ukraine was quick to respond. The Chinese ambassador in Kyiv was summoned and he was questioned about the latest developments. Beijing has now responded, deny and deflect.
China's position on the Ukrainian crisis issue is clear and widely recognized by the international community. It needs to be emphasized that the Chinese government had always requested its citizens to stay away from areas of armed conflict and avoid being involved in armed conflict in any form, especially participating in the military operations of any army.
Now, this isn't the first time that foreign troops have fought alongside Russian troops and have been captured. Ukrainian troops have previously captured North Korean troops as well. According to reports, Pyongyang sent at least 12,000 troops to fight on behalf of Russia. Several have been caught and many have been killed. But this is the first time that Chinese nationals have been captured.
There is a difference. The North Koreans fought in the Kursk area against us, and the Chinese fight on Ukrainian territory. I think that this is an important moment which we must discuss with our partners, and I believe urgently. I know that we're a strong country, but we cannot fight so many countries at once that all need something on our land.
So are these personnel from the Chinese army or are they mercenaries? Russia is fast-tracking the recruitment of men to fight on the front lines, and Moscow is even taking applications from foreigners. Several citizens of other countries have fought alongside Russian troops, and this now includes Chinese. Reports show that many Chinese nationals have volunteered to fight on behalf of Russia, though it's unclear whether they are affiliated to the Chinese armed forces. But the latest developments only paint China in bad light. Beijing's claims of being neutral are now down the drain. Ukraine is accusing China of enabling Russia's war. Kyiv has urged allies to respond to the latest developments. But some questions remain. Why are Chinese nationals fighting in Ukraine? Are they personnel from the Chinese army trying to gain combat experience? Or are they mercenaries wanting to earn an extra buck?
This is not just about 2 soldiers. This is about a bigger military realignment, a rivalry beyond geography. Just think about it. When was the last time Asian soldiers fought in a European war? Or Western military alliances focused on East Asia? Probably during the Second World War, but today we are seeing a repeat. Thousands of North Koreans are fighting in Ukraine. The US says 11,000 of them. Some reports say 100,000. Either way, it's a big number, especially for a country on the other side of the world. And now we get reports of Chinese nationals. Yet these could be China is heavily involved in this war. They are a key supplier to Russia's war machine. Whether it's semiconductors or microelectronics or dual-use goods, basically things that have civilian and military use. China has shipped billions of dollars worth of such goods to Russia. Without them, the front lines may look different. And this is new territory for China. They're basically meddling in a war all the way in Europe, away from their sphere of influence. On the other side, Japan is doing the same. Tokyo is not giving bullets or jets to Ukraine, but if you travel along the front line, you may be surprised. You will see dozens of Japanese trucks and cranes. They may not be armed, but they directly help the war effort. Japan is also looking to join the NATO Command for Ukraine. This command is based in Germany. It coordinates military aid and training for Ukraine. If Japan joins, it would be a big deal.
Japan is considering joining NATO's security assistance for Ukraine, and we are planning to take the necessary procedures to participate. We consider this a significant move towards the ending of Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
So as Asia is heavily invested in the Ukraine war, Asian soldiers are fighting there, and Asian equipment is being used. The opposite is also true, by the way. The NATO chief is touring Asia this week. His name is Mark Rutte. Now, NATO is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That's what it's called, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. You focus on both sides of the Atlantic, North America and Europe. That's the brief. So what's the NATO chief doing in Asia? Think of it as an outreach tour. Mark Rutte visited a maritime facility in Japan, and while there he took aim at China. He talked about China's recent military drills near Taiwan. He called them worrying.
You know the policies of all allies in NATO, but also when it comes to the IP4 concerning Taiwan, so that you know. And of course we are worried about all these drills and all these military exercises. So we follow them very closely and are a worrying sign, clearly.
How about that? The NATO chief slamming China in Japan. It clearly signals an expansion of NATO's priorities. But it's not new. It began in 2022. That's when NATO explicitly called China a security challenge for the first time. The same year, 4 Indo-Pacific leaders attended the NATO summit. Leaders from Australia, from South Korea, from Japan and from New Zealand. NATO calls these the IP4 countries, the Indo-Pacific 4, IP4. They attended the NATO summits in 2023 and 2024 as well. So clearly it is the new reality. But the question is, what sort of role is NATO eyeing in Asia? And is it sanctioned by the Americans? The alliance chief offered some clues. He says Washington asked him to undertake this trip. But the goal is not to replicate Article 5. As you know, Article 5 is NATO's mutual defense clause. It says an attack on one NATO country is an attack on all of them.
And it was the US itself which also asked me, NATO, to become even more involved. Not like Article 5 or anything like that, but in terms of joint defense, industrial capacity, base building, innovations, etc. That's one of the reasons I'm here.
That's still a broad agenda. We're talking about joint defense plans, expanding military bases and sharing innovations and technology. Basically, just short of mutual defense in Article 5. But are there takers for this plan? Well, NATO's pitch is quite simple. Look at what's happening in Ukraine. That could be East Asia's future tomorrow. This is what the NATO chief said in Japan. He's ramping up the stakes for Asian countries, almost pressuring them to sign on. Historically, Asian countries have opposed NATO, but the alliance is betting on the fear of China. And of course, Beijing knows this, which is probably why they want to keep NATO busy in Russia. All of this signals a widening of the political chessboard. The old geographical lines are getting blurred. Alliance missions are getting expanded, and far-off theatres are merging into one big front line. The last time this happened was the Cold War. Let's hope common sense prevails this time. 400,000. That's how many Palestinians have been displaced since the fragile Gaza ceasefire fell through last month. But now, Indonesia wants to intervene. President Prabowo Subianto has made an announcement. He says the Southeast Asian country, Indonesia, wants to offer shelter to Palestinians who've been hit by the war. This will be on a temporary basis, and it will apply to orphans and people in need of medical treatment. Subianto expects 1,000 evacuees in the first wave, and this comes days after Jakarta discussed a pilot program to allow Gazans to emigrate to Indonesia for work. So what's behind these moves, and what does Subianto hope to achieve with them? Here's a report.
Gaza increasingly looks like a quote-unquote killing field. Since Israel renewed its offensive last month, 1,449 Palestinians have been killed. About 400,000 have been displaced. Indonesia has now offered a helping hand. President Prabowo Subianto is ready to shelter Palestinians, specifically medical evacuees and children orphaned by the war. He claims he's instructed the foreign minister to start discussions with the Palestinian authorities and draw up a plan on how they'll be evacuated. Subianto intends to send planes to transport the victims. He expects them to bring back about 1,000 Palestinians in the first batch. Now, the move will not be for permanent resettlement. Indonesia is the world's most populous Muslim-majority country. It has long been a supporter of Palestinians. Last year, it was willing to send peacekeeping troops to Gaza. And now, Subianto claims that other nations have called on Jakarta to increase its role in seeking a resolution to the conflict. He added, Indonesia's commitment in supporting the safety of Palestinians and their independence has pushed our government to act more actively. But there could be more to the story. For months now, US President Donald Trump has proposed to move all Palestinians out of Gaza, to take ownership of the territory, oversee a massive cleanup process, and then develop it as a premier real estate project. Unsurprisingly, Israel loved the plan. This week, Benjamin Netanyahu met Trump in Washington and they discussed it.
I think it's an incredible piece of important real estate, and I think it's something that we would be involved in.
Gaza was the only place where they locked him in. We didn't lock him in. They're locked in. And what is wrong with giving people a choice?
This is a highly controversial idea. Palestinians have rejected this proposal. So have African nations contacted by Israel and the US to house the displaced Gazans, and dozens of Arab and Muslim-majority nations, including Indonesia. About 2 months ago, their foreign ministry said it strongly rejects any attempt to forcibly displace Palestinians. And Jakarta's opinion has not changed, at least publicly. But amid tariff troubles, it can't afford to put off Trump.
The U.S. giving such a high tariff increase to many countries, this can cause uncertainty. Many countries are worried. In fact, the founders of our nation from the past, and including me for years, have reminded us to build our economy with the target of standing on our own 2 feet.
Southeast Asia's biggest economy faces a 32% tariff, so it's trying to woo America. It will send a high-level delegation to the United States next week. It has announced a raft of concessions on US imports. Last month, it discussed a pilot program with Israel, a country with which it doesn't have diplomatic relations. So Jakarta and Jerusalem opened a special communication channel to discuss a plan to allow Gazans to emigrate to Indonesia for work. According to reports, around 100 Gazans would be part of the first wave of the program. While the plan hasn't been executed yet, Indonesia seems to have opened its arms to Palestinian refugees even wider. But the timing of it all is hard to ignore.
Our next story is like the plot twist of a geopolitical thriller. And for that, we are turning to Afghanistan. The US wants to make a comeback to Afghanistan. American military planes have been spotted at the Bagram Air Base. Yes, Bagram, the very same base that Washington abandoned in 2021. Military equipment worth billions was left behind, not to mention allied Afghan troops. They were all left behind. It was a chaotic exit and a PR disaster for the world's largest military. 4 years have gone by. There is a new sheriff in town. I'm talking about Donald Trump, of course. And now the Americans are making a U-turn. They want Bagram back. Well, here's what we know. On the 7th of April, reports emerged about increased air activity near Kabul. Open source flight trackers, in fact, gave a better picture. An American C-17 military plane landed in Bagram. It is a massive cargo aircraft. It is hard to miss. It reportedly touched down in Bagram, but the plane was not empty. it offloaded military hardware and senior intelligence officials, including the CIA deputy chief, Michael Ellis. Clearly, the Americans are up to something, and it has the Taliban stamp of approval. They wouldn't want the Americans back unless there's a trade-off. More on that later. Some reports also say that the Taliban has handed Bagram back to the US. The Taliban calls it propaganda. They say they have full control of the airbase. So what's really happening? Let's try and break it down for you. The Bagram Air Base is located just north of Kabul. It was a strategic air base for US and NATO forces. It was used to launch airstrikes against Taliban and other terrorist groups. But everything changed in July 2021. Then US President Joe Biden announced an exit. Americans left Afghanistan in a hurry. The Bagram Air Base was ditched in the cover of the night, and Taliban seized it within days after capturing Kabul. 4 years later, the Americans are desperate to return. Trump even wants boots on the ground at Bagram. Listen to this.
But we were going to keep Bagram, not because of Afghanistan, but because of China, because it's exactly 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear missiles. So we're going to keep Bagram. We were going to keep a small force on Bagram. We're going to have Bagram Air Base, one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it up. And you know who's occupying it right now? China.
4 years after a horrible and botched exit, and they want to redeploy troops to Afghanistan. To know shame is to be human. You may have heard this quote before. What does it say about Uncle Sam? Trump says the Bagram Air Base is strategic. It is close to China's nuclear missile sites. Trump also says that Bagram is currently being occupied by China. Now, we're not sure about the Chinese presence, but the air base is vital. We know that. Let me show you on a map. Bagram has 2 large runways. It has almost 100 parking bays for military aircraft, and the airstrip's location is strategic. It would give Americans closer access to China, particularly Xinjiang. That's where China has several nuclear missile silos. A flight from Bagram to Xinjiang is less than an hour. And that's not all. The airbase is significant for Trump's Iran strategy as well. Bagram means US military planes will be in Iran's backyard. This is why they're eager to return. It sends a message to Beijing and Tehran. Trump is trying to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, a stone called Bagram. But where does that leave the Taliban? They fought a bloody war to keep the Americans out. Eventually, they had it their way. Why would they want the US to return? Well, one could think of 2 reasons. First, security. Taliban has many rivals, like ISIS-K, Islamic State Khorasan province. The Taliban sees ISIS-K as a challenge to their authority. And then there's Pakistan. Taliban and the Pakistan army have had multiple skirmishes recently, so the US military's return to Bagram means drone strikes and surveillance against ISIS-K. It would also force Pakistan to keep its guns silent. And the Taliban would be happy with both scenarios. That's the first reason, security. The second is money, or could be. The Taliban is in dire need of cash. Allowing Americans to return to Bagram means one thing: dollars. And the thaw has already begun. Last month, Taliban released a US citizen, the 4th this year. In return, the US has dropped bounties on key Taliban leaders, including a $10 million bounty on Sirajuddin Haqqani, the man who masterminded attacks on US forces. He was on the FBI's most wanted list, and now he's free. That's a seismic shift in US policy. And there's more. The US wants to resume consular services in Afghanistan. Diplomatic talks have become frequent. And the Taliban is welcoming this.
Discussions were held on Afghanistan-US bilateral relations, the release of prisoners, and the provision of consular services to Afghans in the United States. The Minister of Foreign Affairs further emphasized the importance of resolving issues between Afghanistan and the United States through dialogue.
So what's next? Has the US taken over Bagram? Well, for now it is just reports, but don't be surprised if Trump makes a deal. Will it be a strategic masterstroke or another disaster in the making? We'll have to wait and see, but one thing is quite clear: Bagram's story is not over. Imagine it's Monday morning. You should be busy attending meetings or answering emails. Instead, you're sleeping past the alarm, snoozing it, contemplating what to eat, and doing nothing all day. If it sounds like the dream job, well, Google has made it a reality. Reports suggest that Google is paying AI employees to do nothing for a year, absolutely nothing. But there's a twist too. They can do nothing, but they cannot join other AI rivals. And Google is not the only one doing this. AI is becoming a bigger part of our lives, so companies are going out of their way to poach and retain AI talent. Our next report has more.
Imagine this. You work as an AI researcher. You wake up at 10:30 a.m. You pour yourself a latte. You flip open a laptop to find nothing. No Zoom invites. No Slack ping. No code to review. And, importantly, no expectation to actually produce anything. For the next 365 days, your job is to sit still, be quiet, and above all, not defect to OpenAI. This isn't a vacation. It's a corporate hostage situation with full benefits. Welcome to Silicon Valley's escalating AI arms race, where doing absolutely nothing can be a full-time job. According to reports, Google is literally paying some of its top AI minds to take a year off, provided they don't go work for the enemy. It's called a non-compete agreement, but in practice, it looks a lot like the world's most lucrative timeout. Artificial intelligence is at the red-hot center of a trillion-dollar tech future. Every day, there are new products, new innovations. Yet, the people producing them are a handful. Everybody's chasing the same narrow pool of elite researchers. And when supply is low and demand is frothing at the mouth, the market gets weird, which is why companies guard their talent fiercely. Of course, Google isn't alone in this poaching war. Take Meta, for example. Reports suggest CEO Mark Zuckerberg is dabbling in the lost art of letter writing. He has reached out to AI researchers in Google. In fact, he has written them personal emails the Meta CEO even offered them jobs without interviews. Then, there is Google co-founder Sergey Brin. He apparently had to call an employee who was leaving Google for OpenAI. Brin had to personally convince to stay, including promises of more perks. And it is truly getting crazy out there. Candidates are being offered eye-watering salaries. Those are being matched with salary hikes. Then, there are other perks like stocks and free travel. Everything is on the table. When it comes to poaching talent, take Huawei, for example. It is turning heads and emptying wallets by offering triple the salaries of TSMC. And it is not just Huawei. Chinese AI companies are offering a lot of money to Western AI researchers. So where does this all end? With more money, more non-disclosure agreements, more secrecy, and probably more burnouts. The AI boom feels unstoppable. But there's a human cost buried beneath the GPU clusters. Talented minds are being traded like assets, with little time to breathe, explore, or remember why they got into this in the first place. For now, the war for AI talent is real, and it's only getting weirder. If you're lucky enough to be in that top 1% of AI minds, congratulations. Someone out there is probably willing to pay you a fortune to just stop showing up. So, take the money, sit on the beach, and just don't answer that email from Zuck.
Now let's shift our focus to London. This is one of the top financial centers in the world, but the city is losing its super rich. A new study is out. It says that over the past decade, London has lost about 30,000 millionaire residents, out of which more than 11,000 millionaires have fled in just the last 12 months. This is the biggest exodus of the super wealthy in the world after Moscow. So why are millionaires leaving these cities, and where are they going? What are the top 5 destinations for the super rich in our world? Our next report tells you.
It was the 1950s. Rich families from all over Europe and even Africa and Asia migrated to London in droves. This trend continued till the early 2000s. The British capital became one of the world's top destinations for migrating millionaires. But that's not longer the case. The super rich are running from London instead of towards it. Over the past decade, millionaires have increasingly fled this financial hub. London was home to 245,100 millionaires in 2014. But by 2024, this number dwindled to 215,700. That's 30,000 millionaires gone. In the last decade. In fact, in 2024, London lost 11,300 millionaires. This includes 18 centimillionaires, or people a net worth of $100 million or more, and 2 billionaires. In total, since 2014, the capital has lost 12% of its wealthiest residents. The only country that lost a higher proportion of millionaires in the world is Moscow. Over the past decade, the Russian capital has lost 25% of its super-rich. It saw a fall of 10,000, from 40,000 millionaires in 2014 to 30,000 in 2024. Out of the top 10 wealthiest cities in the world, London and Moscow are the only ones where the number of millionaires fell. So what's behind this? In London, the decline is attributed to a range of reasons. Economic uncertainty after the Brexit, failure to recover from the 2008 recession, tax rises under the Conservative and Labour governments, and fall in the value of the pound. As for Moscow, the exodus of the elite is mainly driven by President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. So if the super-rich are fleeing London and Moscow, where are they going? In recent years, 3 cities have experienced the highest growth in millionaires: Shenzhen and Hangzhou in China, which demonstrate potential as emerging tech hubs, and Dubai in the United Arab Emirates, mostly thanks to its combination of no income or capital gains taxes, and its ease of doing business. That said, these cities are far behind the top 5 global hotspots for the ultra-wealthy. The Big Apple seems to be the apple of most millionaires' eyes. Because overall, New York is ranked as the richest city in the world. Its brownstones and high-rises are home to 384,500 millionaires, followed by San Francisco, which is home to Silicon Valley's tech giants and 342,400 millionaires. Tokyo is the 3rd richest city, with 292,300 millionaires, followed by Singapore's 242,400 millionaires, and Los Angeles's 220,600 millionaires. Now, despite the major drop in the number of millionaires, London stands at rank 6. But by the looks of it, it may not be there for much longer.
This week marked the end of Season 3 of White Lotus. It is one of the most watched shows in the world. It's basically a dark comedy, a mocking take on the rich, powerful people living in a world of their own, not affected by what happens outside. Sounds familiar? Well, it should. It's a bit like a rich, powerful president unleashing a trade war on the whole world. The irony was not lost on the viewers. Even otherwise, some of the audience felt underwhelmed. Take a look. And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. At least 100 people were killed after the roof of a nightclub collapsed during a concert in the Dominican Republic. Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson was attacked by an ostrich during a safari. And in Birmingham, A man in a rat costume confronts the local government over a garbage crisis. Finally, we're taking you back in history on this day in 1940. Nazi Germany invaded Denmark and Norway during the Second World War. Denmark surrendered. It was occupied almost immediately. Norway resisted for 2 months, but it later surrendered to the Nazis. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, Christ! Oh, Christ! Oh, Christ!